It's time to play another game. The Saw series is coming back from the dead with Spiral from the Book of Saw, and this time, there are no rules. If you want to learn more about what to expect from Spiral, well, you've come to the right place.
You want to play games, mother?
The first Saw film shocked audiences back in October 2004, setting the tone for the torturous form of horror that dominated the genre during that decade. From 2004 up until 2010, horror fans got a new Saw film every year as a Halloween present, with Jigsaw, the 8th installment in the franchise, hitting theaters in 2017. Now, we'll get to see what the next chapter in the Book of Saw, Spiral, has in store.
If that Spiral is what I think it is.
Jigsaw?
Wait, I thought the Jigsaw killer was dead.
Yeah, but if it's another copycat...
It's gonna be a show.
It's been a long journey for the 9th film in the Saw franchise. Originally, the movie was set for release in October 2020, but it looks like another senior horror franchise elbowed its way back into that territory. After the success of 2018's Halloween, Michael Myers was supposed to return for everybody's favorite spooky holiday with the follow-up, Halloween Kills, which was originally planned for a 2020 release. Most likely not wanting to compete with the man in the William Shatner mask, Spiral changed its release date to May 15, 2020. Of course, as we all know, neither horror film made it to theaters as intended, as the world was turned upside down and theaters closed by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, you can't stop a good slasher franchise from coming back to life, and now, Spiral from the Book of Saw is set to hit theaters and IMAX on May 14, 2021. The cast of Spiral from the Book of Saw sounds pretty impressive, especially for something so outlandish as a Saw movie. First up, we've got Chris Rock. Whether you know him from his stand-up, his more comedic acting work, or his serious dramatic roles, we can all agree that Rock is a charismatic and thoughtful performer. So it will be super fascinating to see him take the lead in a horror franchise as messed up as the Saw series. In fact, in a refreshing twist, Rock happens to be one of the major creative forces behind the film. His pitch for the movie is reportedly responsible for it existing in the first place, but more on that later. In Spiral, Rock plays Detective Zeke Banks, a cop who's investigating a new string of gruesome murders with some familiar iconography. Of course, he isn't handling the case alone. Rock will be accompanied by Max Minghella, who will be playing Zeke's rookie partner. If you think Minghella looks familiar, that's probably because you've seen him as Nick in The Handmaid's Tale. Both detectives are working for Captain Angie Garza, played by Marisol Nichols of Riverdale and 24 fame. Of course, the biggest name involved is Samuel L. Jackson. The man who brought Nick Fury, Mace Windu, and Jules Winfield to life will be playing police veteran Marcus Banks, the accomplished but estranged father of Chris Rock's character. His casting adds a serious hook to a film some people might otherwise write off. A 9th Saw movie? Well, maybe you feel like you've seen it before. A Saw movie with Samuel L. Jackson, though?
That's all you had to say.
Here's where things get really interesting with this new Saw film. The seed for the story came from an unlikely person, Chris Rock. Variety reports that Rock approached some of the producers behind the Saw franchise with his idea for a new film, and Spiral from the Book of Saw grew from that concept. Joe Drake, chairman of Lionsgate Motion Picture Group, said of Rock's treatment, "When Chris Rock came to us and described in chilling detail his fantastic vision that reimagines and spins off the world of the notorious Jigsaw killer, we were all in." Honestly, we are too. Rock wrote the original story for Spiral, but he didn't write the film's final screenplay. Pete Goldfinger and Josh Stolberg, who also wrote 2017's Jigsaw, adapted Rock's story into Spiral's screenplay. The duo also wrote the surprisingly fun remake of Piranha in 2010. The Saw films vary in quality, and a big part of that is due to how quickly they were being put together. One film every year is a hectic pace. One aspect that many fans still agree on, however, is that the Saw films were in good hands when director Darren Lynn Bousman was at the helm. He directed Saw 2, Saw 3, and Saw 4, helping play off the momentum of the original and make Saw a household name. And now, Bousman is back in the director's chair for Spiral from the Book of Saw. Bousman himself announced that he'd be directing the film on his Instagram, posting an on-set photo from the first day of production in July 2019. Meanwhile, longtime franchise heads Mark Berg and Oren Kulis are also involved as producers. Even better still, James Wan and Lee Wanell, the original duo who brought Jigsaw to life and have since given us modern horror classics like The Conjuring and The Invisible Man, are serving as executive producers. So if anything is going to help bring the Saw franchise back from the dead, it's this team. So how exactly does Spiral from the Book of Saw fit into the timeline of the franchise? Is it a sequel? Is it a total reboot? Well, for answers, we can look to the Twitter account of Josh Stolberg, one of the writers for the film. In 2019, he responded to a curious fan, saying of the new movie, "It's not a sequel to Jigsaw. It's definitely in the timeline of all the films, though." With that out of the way, what's the plot of this new film? As it turns out, Spiral is set years after Jigsaw's death, but his memory still looms large over the world. In fact, it seems that he's inspired a copycat killer, one who's targeting cops. Into this bloody game comes Chris Rock's Zeke Banks. He's a detective who's been saddled with a rookie partner and, according to the official plot synopsis, is working in the shadow of his father.
You pull a gun on your old man? You out of your mind? I could have killed you.
What are you talking about? I got the gun.
I could have killed you.
But as the bodies start piling up, Zeke is forced to reunite with his estranged dad to solve this case and figure out the copycat's motive, which might involve a twisted form of justice. Horror and humor have a lot in common, both relying on good timing, atmosphere, and the right buildup of tension and release. Horror has always been closely tied with humor, whether a film is providing respite from blood and gore, lulling the audience into a false sense of security, or just playing with the stereotypes of the genre. A good joke can go a long way when it comes to lightening the mood of an otherwise dark movie. Chris Rock isn't always trying to be funny, but you still might think that his involvement in Spiral from the Book of Saw could make for a movie that's a bit lighter in tone than the rest of this relentlessly bleak series. But it seems like that isn't entirely the case. Speaking with IGN, Rock said that Spiral will have some humorous elements, mainly because the franchise was completely lacking them. He said, "I love Saw, but I was like, wow, it has almost no humor at all. So it seemed like a good place, good fertile ground." Saying that he'd already seen a rough cut of the movie, he reported, "It's still Saw. It's bloody, it's gory, but there's like a sprinkling of humor here and there. We're not revamping it. It's not Scary Movie, it's Saw."
Of course, he wants us to cut through our feet. You go first.
Every horror franchise has its big bad. The Friday the 13th movies have Jason. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies have Freddy Krueger. And the Saw series has John Kramer, aka the Jigsaw Killer. Granted, he died back in the third film, but his legacy still haunts the franchise, as his apprentices keep popping up to play nasty games with unwilling participants. But will John Kramer appear in Spiral from the Book of Saw? Well, maybe. In one of the trailers, we see a stack of photos, and if you're paying close attention, you'll notice that one of them is Jigsaw himself. So at the very least, we'll see a very literal snapshot of the man. But will actor Tobin Bell actually reappear somehow? Well, in a Collider interview back in October 2020, Bell was asked if he was psyched for the film and if he would reprise his iconic role. His answer? "Oh yeah, I'm excited for it, but it's not something I can really talk about at this particular moment." Well, that's an interesting answer indeed. Based on that response alone, it seems Bell very well might be involved with Spiral. Granted, the movie isn't listed on Bell's IMDb page, and he hasn't shown up in any of the promotional materials aside from that one old photograph. Most importantly, his character is dead, but when has that stopped a slasher villain from coming back? After all, Kramer showed up in 2017's Jigsaw via flashbacks, so maybe Bell will return for one last game. At the very least, John Kramer's influence will be all over this film as his copycat starts a new reign of terror. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more Looper videos about your favorite horror movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.